Kia ora. I'm Oliver Hunt, and I'm the founder of MedSolve, which I founded in 2017 as part of my Masters in Engineering Management project. We're all about making healthcare more sustainable, and we do that by dealing with the problem caused by single-use medical devices, the ones that are purchased from somewhere else, bought here, used once, and put into our landfills. The solution we provide allows for 4 key benefits for our hospitals: healthier spending, a healthier planet, a healthy supply chain that has less exposure to ships getting stuck in canals or foreign exchange, and ultimately healthier people. It's pretty simple. Hospitals use the products as they normally would. We then collect them. We subject them to a remanufacturing process at our facility here in Christchurch, and then we return them back to the hospital. All of our remanufacturing is carried out under an ISO 13485 certification standard, and all of our operations across the entire country, including freight, are carbon zero and climate positive certified. Every single product we remanufacture is tested every time we remanufacture it. And as I said, it's local. From a business model perspective, it's pretty simple. We take waste, we make it useful, and we sell it back to hospitals. There's a pretty big opportunity for New Zealand to benefit from what we do. If we take the numbers in America where it is a prevalent practice and apply them to the New Zealand context, it makes up about 15% of the public sector's annual spend on medical devices. It's quite a lot, eh? So I've been doing it for 5 years, and we've made some really good impact. Here's a quote from one of my team members, and I'll talk about what we do in the social sustainability light in a second. We've been lucky to be supported by a number of organisations across this region and across the country. And here's a few of their logos. The University of Canterbury is where I started the project, and I took it through the University of Canterbury Summer Startup Program as well. We're working with more than 75% of New Zealand's hospitals, and we've been recognised nationally as the leading circular economy business. In 2019, we won the award, and we got highly commended last night again, which is tough because we get judged against our previous progress, I suppose. And we've got a pretty decent team. These 2 slides are still in here. They kind of just show that we can wear suits too, which is cool. But we've won here in Canterbury the Business for Good Award. We've been a finalist again and a finalist in the Innovator category here too. And we've been recognised as a finalist in the Startup Company of the Year at the High Tech Awards, and again winning the Going Circular Award. This is our distribution. So obviously, if you're from Nelson, my details will be at the end of this presentation, thank you. And what we do directly impacts 8 of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but here's some of the obvious ones. Better health. We reduce the cost of care so you can care for more people. Decent work and economic growth. We're actually making medical devices effectively in New Zealand, which is quite rare. One I'm really, really passionate about is the people we employ. So 30% of our workforce have faced significant barriers to employment. And by deliberately designing the way we do things, we've been able to employ them. This one's our bread and butter. We directly reduce the amount of product that can potentially go to landfill, and we recycle as much as we can of the rest of it. And obviously the carbon emissions. We're a good sustainability organisation, but we're really good at customer service too. So, 5 years, how do we get here? There's a lot of words on this slide. What that doesn't show is how hard we've had to push to get our programs into so much of the health system. But we're making a really good impact in New Zealand. For us, the next steps are taking that 75% to 100%, adding more products, and then going offshore. And that's where I'm spending a lot of my time now. We work with really big organisations, we work with really small organisations, but we deliver really good impact. So you're probably wondering, why is this 28-year-old guy standing in front of all these teachers talking about this? Well, I suppose it's to show my journey to an extent of how I got to where I am and why. So my family is kind of infested with doctors. Now, this is not my family, this is just a photo. It looks like a bunch of doctors, but you get it. And I needed a master's project, and the company who was going to support my master's wasn't going to pay for me, so I was like, that's not a very nice project for me. I was talking to my uncle who founded a couple of local companies here in Christchurch, they're medical device companies, and we talked about waste in the health system, and that led me on to thinking about what we could do about it, and he had a few ideas and a bit of digging, and that came up with the idea of MedSelf. But before that, I had done a bunch of work with companies like OSIS, the company he founded. They make 3D printed implants for people who can't have an off-the-shelf implant. So they CT scan someone, build a computer model of their body, and then print in titanium an implant for them. Pretty cool. And Enztech, which is another company that makes surgical instruments for some of the biggest manufacturers in the world, or the biggest suppliers in the world. Both of those companies are based here in Christchurch. And I'd been lucky enough to work on some of the work they were doing, and some of the things that are adjacent to it throughout my university studies, which were a mechanical engineering degree and a Master's of Engineering Management. That's also Tom, who's one of our mechatronics engineers, doing something. I think he might have been posing for that photo, not actually doing whatever he looks like he's doing there. And I had the opportunity through the university and some of the summer student programs to work with the University of Otago and develop the testing method for that metal that goes on the back of what is an acetabular cup, or what you put on the back of a hip implant. So that's how I kind of got into it, and what gave me the ability to look at the opportunity and go, yeah, I can do something about this. And I suppose the other reason I'm here to talk is because 3 years ago I talked to one of your colleagues at a presentation here in Christchurch, and I talked about how important it is for the people who are at school to understand what they can do, not at uni, but after it. So they're not one of the guys who calls me up and says, hey, Ollie, I really don't like my job. I might be 5 years out of my engineering degree, which I've spent a lot of money getting, and doing an engineering job now, which I can't really leave very easily, but I'm not sure if it's the right one for me. So if you can tailor your questions towards that sort of stuff, that might be useful. Thanks.
Do I get the extra 1 minute 40 on that you had left? Hi all. That'll be it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about our electric aircraft and our sustainable aviation world that we live in, which is a little bit different to some of the other things you might have heard. Obviously, the problem that we're facing is that we fly a lot. So at any one time pre-COVID, there were about 1 million people in aeroplanes at any one time up in the sky, and we're heading very fast back up to those levels. Aviation is actually the fastest growing form of emissions that we have, so we need to do something about it. Just a little bit on our story. I was driving electric cars. I'm not sure I've got a slide on that. Yeah, there you go. Driving electric cars and flying petrol planes, and it wasn't really fitting very well with the image. So I went to Slovenia and looked at this aeroplane from a company called Pipistrel, first electric plane in the world that's is certified, and had a fly in it, and I was hooked. So we set about bringing the aircraft to New Zealand. It's 100% battery electric, and it's really designed as a training aeroplane. So all the planes that you and I fly around in have to have pilots who get trained, and all of those pilots get trained at the moment by burning lots of oil. So if we can remove those emissions, that's a good start. So just to give you a little bit on that's the battery pack, and that little disc there is the equivalent of that thing. So what we're moving towards is much simpler, low maintenance technology that doesn't burn oil. So it just seemed to make a lot of sense to me. So we established the company here in Christchurch. It's a kind of social enterprise for sustainability. We've got great support from Christchurch Council and Christchurch Airport and a few others. And that's me being very excited at Littleton when the plane came on a ship, which burnt lots of oil to get here. But anyway, you know what I go, sometimes you need to go over the details. Our launch at Christchurch Airport. And just to put in perspective, so a typical Cessna burns about $100 of fuel an hour. We burn about $3 of electricity, and the other obvious difference is that's got a big tailpipe emission. We have no tailpipe. Don't seem to be able to move. Oh, here we go. One question that everyone always asks around electric cars and planes is where does all the electricity going to come from to power all the stuff? So I just want to nail that one. The figure you always see from car companies is about the emissions out of the tailpipe, but they ignore all the bit before the tailpipe, which is that we have to refine oil, we have to use loads of electricity to refine the oil, then we stick it on ships, like our plane came, and those ships, about a third of the world's ships are just moving around carrying oil, and they're all burning oil to carry the oil, and then they go into trucks, which then go to the petrol stations, which also take electricity to pump into the car. So all of that is forgotten when the car companies talk about the emissions from tailpipe. So the answer to all the electricity is going to come from is we stop refining oil and we just take the electricity and put it into the car and the plane. And the other important thing to remember is that a petrol car, a combustion engine, is about 25% efficient. So if you take your dollar and stick it in your car, you'll move about 25 cents forwards. But for the electric car, you move about 95 cents forward. So it just makes sense. And that's why it's happening. Battery costs massively reducing every year. Just a slide on big planes. Yes, it's really hard. No, we haven't got the solution today. Are we working on it? Yes. But don't let perfect get in the way of good. There's a lot we can do today. And so start with those training flights and flight schools and work your way up. By the way, New Zealand has the highest rate of short-haul flights per capita in the world. So we do a lot of flying, and half of our emissions come from those short-haul flights. So we can do a lot to change those this decade. Just one little show-off thing we wanted to say. We decided to get on COP26, wasn't it, last year at Glasgow, we decided to fly across the Cook Strait to show that it can be done. It was 100 years since the first ever flight across, and and the main thing I learnt from that flight, which, by the way, was a world record farthest flight over water by an electric plane, is the word farthest, which I didn't actually know was different to furthest. But anyway, according to the, anyway, that's my education for that. So it's slightly different, but yeah, either way. I think we're nearly there. I just love that shot coming to Wellington. So yeah, it's all around us. We don't see the use of petrol. We can't see those emissions, but it's not good for us. We're all being polluted and sitting there idling our cars, and there just is an easier, different way of doing it. So final thoughts. From our experience, the main things that we've learned really are that going first is nuts. Starting a business is difficult. But technology isn't the barrier, and we just feel that with all of these technologies and with sustainability, it's just a matter of will. And we've just seen a pretty terrible COP27. We're seeing wars controlled by people who we rely on to get oil from, It's not a good solution. We can do something about it. Technology isn't the thing that's stopping us. So I think it's just about us pooling together and doing the right thing. And it's very, very achievable. I suppose the last thing to say is we're based in Christchurch and we're available. So if anyone wants to come and see the aeroplane or experience a trial flight, those are available. I think that's it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Gary. Kia ora tātou. Ko mea te takuingoa. My name's Matt Cullen. I'm GM on-farm excellence environment at Fonterra. Now, I often see some of these fancy corporate titles and it's not apparently clear in terms of what we actually do. So what I actually do in plain English is I look after a team. We're responsible for setting our on-farm environmental sustainability strategy, as well as developing a lot of tools and services that our regional teams utilise to go out and support our farmers to meet some of our vision and strategy goals. Now, I'm feeling a little bit guilty in this company. I think I've got 3 slides and none of them have got words on them, and I'm not sure where John is. I don't know if that's reflective of my link in education, but I'll let you guys perhaps be the judge of that. Look, many of you have probably heard Miles, our Chief Executive, talk about leading in sustainability, and look, it's really easy to overlook or perhaps even be a little bit cynical about this. But Fonterra and farmers have got some real credentials when it comes to leading in sustainability. You know, perhaps even if it was from some slightly humble beginnings. If I kind of roll back the years to when I first started working at Fonterra, I think it was fair to say, if we use a bit of corporate speak, we had a few work-ons when it came to sustainability performance, probably articulated fairly well by the picture here, and Fish and Game's Dirty Daring campaign. We probably moved on to kind of 2011. It probably didn't get a lot better, but we didn't do our sustainability credentials any great benefit when we actually commissioned an audit. It was then MAF, showed that stock exclusion on our farms was actually a bit closer to 60% than the 99% we were self-reporting. For those who are old enough and can perhaps remember, it resulted in our then Chief Executive going on one of the post-news programs. Again, for those old enough to remember, that was Campbell Live. Made some very bold commitments and time frames about what we were going to do about it. And if I recall correctly, it was in November. And I think the commitment was going to get stock out of waterways by Christmas the following year. So nothing like a bit of a crisis, a subsequent deadline to provide some clarity of leadership. Now, not something I'd stand up here and am particularly proud of, but I think the really positive take out of this was the leadership that was shown. You know, rather than kind of bury heads in the sand, and I think if we're really honest, that was an option. Lots of others have done it. We didn't. We stood up. We set some really clear standards. You know, we benchmarked against them regularly. We developed some really clever tools, but probably most importantly, utilised some really great people to provide support to those who needed it. Probably resulted in more than a few wet socks and gumboots along the way. You know, I think the results there kind of speak for themselves, and it didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't without some challenging conversations along the way. But we did learn some very clear lessons about the value of great people and the role that they play in driving change. But as I'm sure you'll all appreciate, leadership doesn't stand still, nor does it reflect well to those, on those who perhaps rest on their laurels. So if we kind of fast forward, perhaps to our current strategy and aspirations, you'll see some really significant changes compared to perhaps where we were back in 2011. We've got climate policy, market requirements, consumer expectations, they're changing faster than ever. Increasingly our stakeholders are taking a much deeper interest in what brands and organisations are doing when it comes to their environmental and societal responsibilities. And I guess John probably did a really great job there of kind of describing some of those earlier. So look, we've kind of got 3 really key strategic pillars that we kind of focus on. And I just want to give you a little bit of insight in terms of how they relate to kind of what we do on farm. Look, the first one there I want to kind of touch on is around maximising New Zealand milk. For us, it's about how we kind of work with farmers, and offer some of those personalised services that leverage our teams of specialists and tools to optimise sustainable milk production here at home in New Zealand. We've got some really, really talented and passionate people who are out there with their gumboots on, identifying and diagnosing opportunities to be more efficient. It could be how long it takes to milk cows, to how efficiently or how effectively we're converting, nitrogen fertiliser into pasture. And I guess it's that really, for you guys, it's how do we really incorporate that blend of technical skills and know-how, as well as that use of ability to utilise tools and technology to kind of really enable our teams to kind of connect with farmers and form those really strong trusted advisor relationships that we know, accelerate that pace of change. The next one I wanted to kind of cover there is around farming with the environment. As we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, We've had some real success in improving on-farm practices through specialised consultation and support. We've got a team of what we call sustainable dairying advisors, out there, lots of Lincoln grads, John, if you're still here, working one-on-one with farmers to develop farm environment plans. That's about identifying risks on farms, coming up with actions, time-bound actions to address those risks, and enabling us to meet some of the aspirations that you can kind of see here, that reflect those local expectations of the communities that we operate in, as well as those of our customers often abroad. And again, looking not only at some of those technical skills, but also change management and influencing skills really critical here. Perhaps the final one we've kind of got on there is around, innovating the future of farming. And this is really focused on embracing the role that agricultural technology plays in the future of farming. And look, there's a huge spectrum there, from connecting, developers and farmers and customers to kind of foster innovation, to supporting farmers to actually adopt, could be some really simple applications like digital dairy diary applications. Make sure you say that one correctly. And the use of real-time data to make farm management decisions, right through to development of methane mitigation options. And I know a number of you will have probably heard of kombucha, which is a natural solution that our R&D team up in Palmerston North are working on to potentially reduce the amount of methane produced by cows. And again, from a people perspective, it's really about seeking people who are really open to that innovation, thrive on change and challenge, and often comfortable with a little bit of disruption. So I guess, fairly obvious, that the key part in enabling the strategy that we've just talked about is that farmer support. We know that supporting farmers one-on-one is really effective in driving change. And with this in mind, it kind of, brings us to the part that I'm probably most excited about, and that's the skilled and passionate people that are out there that can kind of help it, that are out there and that we need to help us achieve this. And I guess just want to kind of leave you with three things, I think, when you're perhaps talking to some of your students and people looking at roles in agriculture. And the first is that, the rate of change is really, really accelerating. As I mentioned earlier, we're faced with some really rapidly evolving landscapes, when it comes to customers and focus on what's in food, where it comes from, how it was produced, and also from local communities in which we operate, things like impact on water quality and emissions, which we've all seen reflected in some of the regulatory framework that's making a lot of media headlines of late. The second is that there is a really big demand, as John perhaps alluded to, for experts and expertise. We're seeing really significant need for farmer support specialists, who are really passionate about things like fresh water and emissions and biodiversity and how these can be integrated into farm systems and landscapes. But don't want to kind of pigeonhole it and say it's just about environment. There's a broader suite of skills that, and I think the question came up earlier around, absolutely acknowledging some ground we need to make up around how we care and manage our people and our animals and milk quality. So right across that suite of farm systems. We've recently had an expansion of our sustainable dairying advisor team. We've got now over 40 people out there working one-on-one with farmers across the country. And that tools and approach we've developed here has now been replicated over in Australia, which is really, really exciting. Our people come from a really wide range of backgrounds, from those you might describe typically. John talked about, ag and ag science degrees. We've got, ecologists, right through to engineers. So, and it's also, again, just to make it really clear, broaden that environmental sustainability as well. We've also got a national team of experts who are out there working with farmers, that are focused on supporting improvements on milk quality and milking efficiency. So lots and lots of people out there in gumboots, working one-on-one with our farmers. And that's the final one I wanted to kind of leave you with is around, and we talked about this earlier, is around flexibility. So, Fonterra and Fonterra farmers are pretty well represented right across New Zealand. We've got over 8,700 farms out there, a network of over 65 stores and offices across the country. So we're able to offer some opportunities that are really, really flexible, when it comes to location, and lots of scope for career progression within a really exciting industry. So I kind of just want to finish by really encouraging you to perhaps go and check out our website. We've got some fantastic programs and pathways in there, and entrance into Fonterra and dairy. We've got our agribusiness program, really great hub for us to grow future talent, and some great examples of graduates utilising that as a springboard for some really, really great careers in the business. Opportunity to spend some time in some really different areas of the farmer-facing side of Fonterra. We've got our business graduate program, slightly broader, and that it includes options like marketing and sales, supply chain, accounting and finance, IT and HR, just to kind of name a few. But similarly, opportunity to work alongside some real experts in the field and get some really solid foundations to build careers. Perhaps for those looking at a slightly shorter time frame, we offer some really cool summer internship programs again, really great opportunity to give a real hands-on experience of Fonterra across a wide range of business units. And I'll probably just finish up by perhaps echoing John's words in that, look, I genuinely believe that, whilst the future of dairy is not without its challenges, if you have a passion for farming and an appetite for change and innovation, it's a truly exciting place to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll join me in just thanking again Oliver, Gary and Matt for their wonderful speeches on sustainability. We have got a few minutes, a couple of seconds at least. Has anyone got a question you'd like to ask one of the three or the three? Yes? Sure. So this is for Gary. What was your pathway from leaving secondary school?
I'm still on it, I think. I actually went into, I studied business, but I went into renewable energy, into environmental stuff. And so what happened was I ended up, for 20 years, I've been developing wind and solar projects in the UK and now in New Zealand. But there I was driving, and I was really early adopter in electric cars, and I was driving electric cars and flying petrol planes for fun. So the flying was always a hobby, but I was just thinking, is there a way of doing what we want to do, but doing it in a sustainable way? And I think that's the key. I think we shouldn't have to make those difficult choices and make our lives less fun. We can just do it in different ways. And I think everyone who's driven electric cars know that they're fast and comfortable and kind of better in every way. So that was the story. Thanks.
We had a question up here as well. For Matt? Yep.
You market carbon zero milk through Fonterra. How do you arrive at the zero
Carbon zero milk.
Geez, how long have we got? Look, when we market carbon zero milk, so we utilise a verification agency called Toitu, who you probably heard, based here in New Zealand. And what it is, it's about sourcing our lowest carbon milk across the country. And then there's a range of avenues around how we largely offset a lot of those emissions. And it's been a combination of carbon sequestration projects here in New Zealand, planting of some native forestry, and then the other aspect of that is some investment in some sustainable electricity generation offshore in developing countries. So that's how we do it. But look, ultimately, I guess we kind of look at a broader macro picture. You've probably heard some quite bold statements from our chief executive and chairman of the board around, setting some broader targets around emissions, on farm for Fonterra farmers. So, like I say, some really interesting times coming up.
Thanks again to Matt and Gary and Oliver. Give them a big round of applause again. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that.